Hello, everyone. This is Coach Mike Ronchetti, and I'm excited to have a fellow business owner from Indiana with us today. It's a pleasure to be welcoming Brad Hughes to the show today. Hey, Brad.
Hey, it's good to be here, Mike.
Great. Knowing that we're going to hearing a lot about your business and business background, I kind of like you to introduce yourself a little bit to us. A little bit. Can you explain something about your maybe a personal story about your background, or where you lived in the past, where you're living now, about your
Yep.
family, hobbies, and then maybe a funny story that maybe will resonate with the audience.
Yeah. Um, so Dr. Brad Hughes, been a dentist, practicing for about 17 and a half years, grew up in the wonderful state of Indiana. Um, so third generation dentist, all three of us are Indiana University Dental School graduates, my grandfather and my dad. So kind of a cool legacy there. Like not everybody can say, hey, like three generations of dentists. So I'm pretty damn proud of that. And then so Vision Dental Partners, my company, we own 8 dental practices, seven of which are based out of Indiana, one which is based out of South Carolina, which is where I live now, which is kind of there's a bit of a backstory which we can maybe get into a little bit. But anything fun? Gosh, I've got twin 5-year-old daughters, so like they make fun of me every day. They are like the sassiest, cutest, wildest little 5-year-old girls. So I don't even have one story. They're 5 and they're already like making fun of dad on a daily basis for just anything and everything. So I know moving forward it's only going to get worse and yet better and all those good things. Um so yeah, it's the girls and my wife who they it's an every 5-minute thing I'm getting made fun of in my household. So
Oh, well, I appreciate that as well as you're right. You're smart enough to realize that the next 10 years are going to be fun. So,
yeah.
so strap in. You're ready for the adventure here. Good luck. Uh, so great. Well, thanks for telling us about your background. How about telling us about your company a bit, about how it came about and what point you had the confidence really to start running this thing. I mean, because obviously you got a dynamo going. So tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, every day is a learning process still to this point, right? I think, it was really probably 2013. I had been in practice for about 6 years at the time. Really started to see the writing on the wall. The dental space is still incredibly consolidating, but that time there was a lot of early consolidation going on, meaning more private equity companies coming into our space. Um, more founders, growing groups to sort of compete in that space, knowing that down the road, eventually private equity is going to be the big player in the game. And that's really kind of where we're at now. I think with in the M&A space over the next probably 24, 36 months, we're going to see a lot more acquisitions going on, probably, probably around the, like 2021, 2022 levels again after a couple year hiatus here when money got kind of expensive. So, um, but it was really 2013 when I said, look, consolidation in all spaces where it's going. So, I'm 33, 34 years old at that time. Um, just saying, look, if I want to still own my own practice or if I want to be surrounded by a lot of like-minded dentists and team members, I need to get into this group space. I love the entrepreneurial space. I just in any number of ways. So that was kind of my way to say, hey, I'm going to do this. But I didn't actually acquire my second practice until 2019. So it took 6 more years for me to feel like, um, not that I wasn't ready, but I think it was just more that we were just getting all of our ducks in a row. I was still working on like 3Xing the practice that I was in up in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So we were doing some pretty cool things there. There was also a point where at that time I had met my now wife. Um, she had some medical problems. She actually had a stroke, ended up having heart surgery in 2017, which is how we ended up down here in South Carolina, just deciding that, hey, life is short. We want to kind of, she wanted to be near the ocean, and Indiana's not near the ocean. So I was back and forth for 2 years, every single week, Sunday to Wednesday. So that, you know, not that that slowed down the process, but that was priority. So it was focusing on the practices or the practice I was in, and you know, making sure that she was good. So 2019 acquired my second practice, and we've acquired 6 more since then. And so we were an 8 practice group, and you know, we've got some things to learn, but we do a few things pretty damn well.
So you explained really well how you got into it, and as well as your passion behind it. Just let me understand full service. I mean, full service dental partnership like yours, are they all same skill sets, same technology? Do you kind of find it and change them, or do you let them, the natural owners, continue on? Kind of tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, the objective would be, you know, we've done both models. I do have one partner at this point. We'll have a couple other partners here coming up in 2025. But the one partner that I do have, we acquired his practice in Bloomington, and you know, it's been as much of business as usual from a technology standpoint. Um, you know, the main things that we've done from an operations standpoint, which have helped grow the practice, are really where we come into play. Um, are we exactly the same in every location? No. Is that the objective? No. I mean, there's always going to be some level of nuance to that, but there are certain things from an operational and a system standpoint.
Mhm.
We're pretty darn close. So,
Yeah.
but from a technology standpoint, there's some nuance between each practice. But yes, so if we're going to do an acquisition, there are things that will change, sure, for the better, by the way. And but for the most part, yes, like we're gonna let those doctors do you know, do what they've been doing. So
Fantastic. Yeah, because I asked that because obviously technologies somewhat are almost personality driven sometimes when these solopreneurs. I mean, they either go
yep,
real deep in it or they kind of stay classic. And if you bring us, hold it, we're going to stay contemporary and digital and all that. And that's, I understand. Great. For everyone listening, as far as check out the company in the link in the description below and comment on their LinkedIn after you watch the interview. Again, you'll be able to go look at his whole company. His website is very nicely done. So fantastic. I appreciate this part about where you're coming from. Let's talk about maybe a little bit more about what inspired you to get into it a little bit. You know, share it with us. Someone who either pushed you or inspired you and said you can just not do a one-off. You said you had a little gap. There's somebody behind the scenes usually. It might be a spouse or whatever. It might be also just your self motivation of now's the time. So talk about that for a few minutes.
yeah, I think there's really probably, you know, 3 people. You know, first of all, just my dad. I mean, I just growing up around the dental space. I mean, we didn't sit around and talk about it. We didn't have these big, long out, you know, drawn out conversations about what it was to be a dentist or what it took to be a dentist or, you know, operating a practice. We literally never really talked about it much at all. But I was observant, and I was incredibly intentional around watching how big of a part of the community that he practiced in Leo, Indiana. I can't tell you. I mean, going to my Little League games, going to my basketball games, going to the grocery, going to anywhere, people knew who he was, and he had built incredible relationships. Going to, you know, at church, everywhere, and I was just so drawn in by that. You know, looking back, that's probably the biggest. It's probably been the biggest shaping. It probably shaped me more than anything else. Is just those relationships that had really nothing to do with me, but I just observed, and I was just obsessed with that and saying, look, I want that. And it wasn't about anything else. It wasn't. It was just that. I mean, literally, you know, when we were driving down for me to go to Indiana University for undergrad, you know, I distinctly remember driving straight down I-69, and we're between Indianapolis and Bloomington, and you know, I'm trying to figure out how the hell do I do laundry, right? Because I've never done laundry. I think I probably 18 at that time, and you know, my dad literally asked me like, "What do you want to major in?" I said, well, "I want to be a biology major." And he kind of, okay, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to go to dental school. And he kind of remember like him looking in that rear view mirror, you know, just looking right at me in the back seat, and I'm like, that's what we're gonna do. And I wasn't pushed into anything. We never talked. It was just, that's what I wanted to do because I saw the relationships that he had built and the impact that he had on that community. And it's just fascinating to me how he was able to do that. So
Wow.
that would be one. Let me give you two more. So a
Okay.
second one, kind of the other opposite of that. Um, I had a biology instructor my sophomore year at IU, and um, you know, like I'm not saying like I was a 4.0 student. It's not what I was, but I was a decent student. But I got a C on this first exam, and I went into office hours just to kind of talk about it. And this guy had the audacity to say, "Hey, what are you majoring in?" I said, "Biology." He said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to go to dental school." He said, "Well, you might want to think that through and change your major to go do something, figure out something else because you're never going to get into dental school." And I kind of and I just kind of, you know, I walked out of his office, shut the door behind me, and to this day, I literally don't remember his name, but I remember his face. I remember everything about that damn office, and I just have this massive freaking chip on my shoulder, and it's like I will prove that SOB wrong at every freaking level, and so like I work on that every day. The third, I have great family support. Like my wife is, she doesn't put up with a lot of BS, and I mean, she's a former professional soccer player. She's a all conference Division 1 soccer player in college, like great, good student. I mean, really in a lot of ways does so many things so much better than I do. And that she motivates me. It doesn't, if there's a 3-second part of your day where you're feeling bad or you're feeling anything, anytime, I want to say, hey, boo hoo, like, look, man, that ain't how you win. So suck it up and go get after it. And, I respect the hell out of her for that. And so she pushes me a lot.
Well, those three got me one of my other questions kind of answered. It was going to be asking you, doesn't happen in business doesn't happen, success doesn't happen in isolation. What kind of people helped you get through it? And you just described some really great ones. One little thing I want to know is what's your biggest learning as a business owner so far? This is now after graduation, after the conquering the mountain and doing your own
Yep.
successful firm, and then start other things.
Yeah. The one non-negotiable, which is core value alignment. And I don't care at what level in my company, if you are not aligned from a core value standpoint, you need to just find a different company to work for. And that's okay. You're probably going to be happier in a different company anyway. We all need to be working with people and businesses that we align with their core values anyway. So, I'll give you one story about that, which we had done an acquisition. One time we were a 12 practice group. I actually sold off 4 of my practices this year in 2024. We'd acquired a small 4 practice group that was really struggling in Atlanta, and it was basically like taking on 4 startups at the same time. And looking back, there were a lot of red flags that I missed in the due diligence. My bad. That's totally on me. But I had a rollover equity partner. The guy that we acquired these 4 practices from was going to roll over 20% of his equity, and I was going to take over 80% of the equity, and yada, yada, yada. Realized about 6 months after we did the acquisition that he was a terrible core value fit. But I was pumping a lot of my own cash into these. Again, this was almost like 4 startups at the same time. So a lot of money into marketing, a lot of money into recruiting, a lot of money into some CapEx expenses that needed to be done. And it eventually just got to the point where the core value fit that he was putting a lot of stress and not even stress, was just maxing out my management team to the point where it just wasn't working.
Yeah.
And, so it was either choose people or continue forward and get these to the point where we're profitable and just keep going. I chose people over profit and sold those 4 practices off and lost about $500,000 on the deal. But it's what needed to be done. And I believe to this day, I sleep better. I know it was the right decision. It was an expensive, costly mistake, but core value fit is a complete non-negotiable. And I don't care what business you're in. that transcends every single business that's out there. Um, that is the biggest lesson that I've learned in my 17 and a half years.
Can I ask you to give me a little more clarification of your definition of core value? So just so there's no question of what you're saying, is
Yeah.
it
So my core values in our company are action, will to win, bring the fire, close the gap.
ah,
Those four things.
okay?
So if you don't align with those four, and we do reviews every 90 days around our core values. So it's, we may sprinkle in some KPIs and some things like that. Like obviously there's a certain level of execution that needs to happen in any business, but for us, every 90 days, doing core values around, or doing reviews around core values is incredibly important, and it has changed our company.
And allowed you to change your people as far as not bad fits, just maybe morph them, make them more aware of their shortcomings, because everybody doesn't
Yep.
come out of the package that way. You're right. I mean,
Right. And
you're
it's,
acquiring people, a team already, and you don't want to jettison 100% if you can help
yep.
it.
Yeah, no, and we recruit around core values. They're talked about in the recruitment process. They were talked about in the review process. They're talked about in morning huddles, in our practices. They're not just a piece of paper we throw up on a wall and say, "Hey, we Googled a few fun little buzzwords. Let's go make these our core values." That's just not the way it needs to go. These are actually things that we live, breathe, eat, and sleep in this company, and they're pretty big. In fact, they're non-negotiables.
There's some great wisdom right there, what you just said there, and it's fascinating that you went that direction because I usually don't hear that. I want to ask though a little bit about your future now, if we could, and just say,
Yep.
okay, extrapolate what you've done in the past. You've learned, you've worked with people who taught you to systematize your process, and school hard knocks. You already divulged losing some cash in a situation, but you got a more happier team. Let's see it that
Yep.
way. If you think about the next 1 to 3 years, what's your number one point of growth or challenge to achieve your goals, do you think?
Yeah, I would say two things probably. One, we've got to continue to implement doctor coaching. I like the system we have. I think it needs to get significantly better.
Mhm.
Um, that would be one. I think our doctors need, and it's not even necessarily in the clinical side. They just, when it comes to case acceptance, when it comes to being more influential, when it comes to understanding their role and how impactful they are as influencers in their communities and their practices with their teams, like we need to continue to increase their leadership and their levels of influence. I'd say number two, external growth. Like we need to go find um, some acquisition opportunities that align with our core values and vice versa. I think that's what works well, right? The practices that we've brought in and the doctors that we've brought in that align with those core values, and we share values. These deals go swimmingly well, and so really, over the next 12 to 36 months, we need to go find 4 to 8 practices that align with us. And, for doctors that, in the acquisition world and the M&A world, we'd like them to work, say at minimum 3, ideally 5 to 10 more years post acquisition at least,
Mhm.
um, retain equity, and let's go grow their practice. They can focus on dentistry. We'll go do all the other stuff, and let's go grow their practice together.
Nice, 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 simple, clean goals. Good for you. So the next topic is a little bit about averaging of mindsets for newbies, like people getting in industries, any kind of industry. And we work with a historical legend, we call it, Jim Rome, and his work over the last 5, 10 years in business coaching, where just 20 years has kind of set the pace. He passed away just recently, but we hear the phrase that we become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. As you think about this, and what advice do you have for business owners who are trying to do it all on their own now?
Don't. Like, I mean, like I hate to sound like just get that tattooed on your arm. Like, don't do it. it's like the opposite of Nike. Like, just don't do it. I would just don't. Go find rooms where you're the dumbest person in the room. Go find rooms where you're the least experienced person in the room. Go find rooms where if you're not sweating a little bit, I know that sounds cliche, but like that's just what you have to do. If you're living in an echo chamber, it ain't gonna work. If you're hanging out with people where you're the most successful because that's what your ego, like that feeds your ego, like don't do it. Go find a room where you're the one kind of getting your ass kicked a little bit, because that's the only way that it's going to work. Otherwise it's just ego driven. Like, it's fun to go, you go hang out with a bunch of people where, you're the most quote successful, however you define success. We're just saying it's based on a monetary thing.
Yeah.
Then if you're the most monetarily successful, you're not going to have any motivation to go kick ass. So like, you got to get in bigger rooms, or you got to get in rooms where people are bigger than you.
Got it. Good. Thank you. So, Brad, it sounds like you've been blessed with some really incredible people who've helped you on your journey. What would you like to say to them?
I mean, it's that'll almost get you like a little emotional when you really start talking about it. I mean, I'm 44 years old, and I just there really have been just a lot. I mean, whether you're talking, my dad, some people that I've worked with on our management team, like my director of operations has been with me for 11 years, and just so many amazing people. I mean, we've got team members, hygienists, and some assistants, and some front desk that have been with us for a long time. But just thank you. I mean, I thank you to all of them. I mean, my hope is that they're the reason I get up every day and do what I do. They're the reason I get up every day and push myself as hard as I do, because I know they're watching. And that's like, I want them to just keep chasing, keep going. Like, let's keep going. Let's keep chasing what we're going after here. And I've got to lead the way, because if I slow down, they're going to slow down, and I can't do that. So, but I'm just so grateful. Like, the amount of just unbelievably skilled, talented, smart, hardworking people that I've been around is truly incredible.
Well, we have a phrase of, you get the people you deserve. So it sounds like you've done a good job. So congratulations. Brad, it's been a real pleasure talking to you today. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.